I was a prison guard in New Mexico, but I'm currently a patient at a psychiatric hospital where I'm now monitored 24 hours a day. I've only been able to post this through an associate. My mail is checked, but there are ways of getting around this. 6 months ago, murders involving a prison gang named Diablos took place. A week after the event, one of the gang members came to us. I'll call him inmate 47. He had information, and in exchange he wanted a reduced sentence. I wasn't involved in the conversations, but this was arranged with the warden. Word started going around that inmate 47 had traded information for his own benefit. A few attempts at his life followed. The decision was made to move 47 to a secluded part of the prison. I was given the nightly task to monitor him. He grew increasingly agitated and paranoid over the first few days he was there. I could hear his screams at night. I thought the outbursts were due to his violent past, but as 47 sat rocking in the far corner, eyes darting from side to side, the words, "I'm sorry, please leave me alone," came muffled from his hand-covered mouth. He then gazed at me and shakily said, "Stitches." After studying him for a moment, I continued to patrol the corridor. Ahead the lights flickered. One by one the panel lighting went off and back on, like a wave coming towards me. It shrouded me in darkness for a second as I felt air push against me. The darkness continued down the corridor. I then heard the scream of 47. I sprinted back to his cell, calling for backup as I ran. I reached the now open door. There was 47's body on the floor covered in blood. He wasn't alone. A black hooded figure stood over him. I called out for them to put their hands on their head and back away from the body. Their heads slowly glanced round. What stared back at me was a gray-toned disfigured face, mouth and eyes sewn shut with frayed bloodstained string. Then nothing. I woke up in the infirmary the morning after. The image of that thing burned into each retina. I had passed out before backup came to my aid. I was then suspended following a formal investigation. In the weeks ahead I was tormented by what I had witnessed. I couldn't tell anyone what happened. If I started, its hideous face would flash before my eyes as I blinked. I decided the only way it would stop was to end it all. One failed suicide later, I was put in here. I still see it whenever I am asked to talk about what happened. I think it's trying to warn me not to say anything. I'm so sorry to burden you with this information. My fate is now sealed. Just remember, tell no one. You don't want a visit from Stitches. As I check my patient's vitals, I feel that all too familiar feeling creeping into my brain. That gnawing anxiety that starts to eat away at my confidence, making me question what I do. I freshen his ice water, and as I give him his evening nutritional shake, I try to calm my fears with thoughts of reassurance. I am good at this. It suits me perfectly. While gently changing the dressing on his throat where his larynx was damaged, I soothe myself. See, I am a caring person. Still, I can't shake the nasty feeling that I'm simply fooling myself and I'm not actually fit for what I do. Sighing, I pause in the basement doorway. I turn to face my patient, still struggling against his bonds that hold him to his bed. With all sincerity I tell him, I'm really sorry about how long this is taking. I don't like to drag things out this way, but unfortunately this does happen quite often. I have to work through my imposter syndrome before I can kill you. Maybe tomorrow I'll be in the right mind. It seemed quite ironic actually. How something viewed as insignificant would have been what led to the end of the human race. No one had expected it, and neither could anyone explain what was going on. The end was near, and the earth was overrun. What had started as a normal day of grocery shopping for customers and employees alike, had spilled into a long and twisted nightmare. When the attack happened, a few of the shoppers and employees had been able to wall themselves inside the storage unit of the grocery store. They had managed to stay hidden for weeks now. They had rationed what few supplies they could find in there, but with so many mouths, their supplies had dwindled. The survivors were faced with two choices: either stay hidden and starve to death or sneak into the main store for supplies and risk getting slaughtered. They didn't even know if anyone was even still alive. They could very well be the Earth's last survivors. It had been days since the screaming stopped, but they occasionally caught the sound of squeaking. It had happened without warning. They were going through their normal daily routine. Shoppers were shopping and workers were working. All of a sudden there was screaming. A woman had left her infant daughter in a shopping cart, and the cart started to move on its own and threw the baby against the wall. That was when the chaos ensued. The other carts began to come to life, ramming into people and running them over. Some drove around with the entrails of people still hanging over them. A man who had been trying to reach for an item had been knocked to the ground when a cart smashed into his legs. Before he could get up, the cart ran over his face, a wheel tearing out his eyeball and flinging it across the store. The carts herded together and stampeded, crushing people to death due to the heavy groceries they held. Several carts could be seen carrying the lifeless and grotesque corpses of their victims around in their baskets. The same thing was going on in every grocery store in the world. They soon went out into the streets and continued their mayhem. They seemed to have a leader directing the carnage. It was different from the rest, maybe an older model. The cart was sturdier and larger than the others, with a distinctively squeaky wheel. It didn't seem possible, but it appeared to take particular joy in the murders being committed by its fellow carts. All hope seemed lost for the survivors in the store. They were still debating what they should do when they heard the door leading to the storage unit get forced open. There was the sound of footsteps in the hall outside, and they were relieved that someone had finally come for them. Their hopes quickly faded when the footsteps outside were replaced with the sound of a distinctively squeaky wheel.